Well, now we know which school is going to be closed by the South Montgomery Community School Board. Monday night on a 5-2 vote, they decided to close Waveland Elementary. And here is how the decision went.
As we consider the decision tonight with regard to building closures, we will continue to seek the cost-cutting strategies that we've kind of put out in place. And one will be considering a referendum. We've talked about that as a possibility we need to have a referendum. If continued enrollment declines and we cannot cut costs enough. Some of the cost-cutting strategies, just so that everybody knows, we talked about the outsourcing and janitorial service, estimated $250,000 out of the general fund. Reduction in force. This is always one that's a hard one. We've been doing it for years. I mean, this is not the first time that we've looked at cost cutting. In the spring of 2013, we had approximately $390,000 in savings from reduction in force. That is reduction of staff. We've also, on top of that, put into place a reduction of one administrator. We did not fill a position due to administrators leaving and advancing. And that is a cost of approximately $75,000. We're looking at the gas line possibility from South Lawn and possibly Newmarket, which would save estimated $80,000 to $100,000. Some positive things that we've been working on, and we got a report this week. The high school is partnering with Ivy Tech and local businesses to look for relationships to prepare students interested in local business and application. And looking for that as an increase in enrollment. One of the things that Ivy Tech has done since they've come to Crawfordsville is look for ways to fulfill the needs of local industry. And I know they have a program, I cannot remember the name of it. It has to do with manufacturing. What they're going out to do is finding out the needs of all the manufacturing and then providing those education opportunities for those individuals that give them a lead directly into the local manufacturing industry. As we move forward on our cost cutting, one of the things we look at is not moving backwards. And one of the things we did this past year was reduce the number of administrators with the buildings we had. I can sit here and say that probably from my standpoint it wasn't the best idea, trying to split administrators into the buildings. The buildings need an administrator, the kids need an administrator. And as I said, that would be an additional cost. Additional energy conservation. We've had some really good ideas through these meetings and through emails to talk about lighting, changing, and I'm not a lighting expert, changing light bulbs, changing fixtures. There's hopefully grants out there that we can get. There's also a cost to it, so we will look into that. Lighting, solar, wind, geothermal, those are all ideas that we'll continue to investigate. Another thing is our energy savings project that we did in 2012 resulted in savings this past year from September 1st to August 31st of $79,697. And the energy savings project we did for the high school and junior high. Now granted there was a cost to it, but that's what we talk about, the difference between the funds, the CPF. We were able to use CPF money to actually save the general fund money because to operate utilities it comes from the general fund. So those are just some things that we'll continue to look at and continue to work on for additional savings. At this time, I will make a motion, and my motion will be that I move that the South Montgomery Community School Corporation Board of Trustees, in an effort to reduce operating expenses to assist in meeting the funding by the state of Indiana, close Waveland Elementary School in the 2013-2014 school year, and that we report the closure to the Department of Education and request a waiver of the 2-year holding period of disposition of said property in accordance with the Indiana law. With this motion, I also request the corporation administration finalize plans for redistricting and present a final plan for consideration to the board at the February 10, 2014 board meeting. And that would be my motion.
With the heavy hearts, and I second that motion.
So I have a motion from Mr. Mons, a second by Mr. Bumgarner, to close Waveland Elementary at the end of the school year, report the closure to the Department of Education, asking for the waiver of the 2-year holding period, and that the corporation administration finalize the redistricting plans, present the final plan for consideration at the February 10th board meeting. I'll open it up for discussion. Board.
I guess that's my turn. I have some comments, and I'll, like I have in past meetings, try to keep it as brief as I can. I pray that the majority of this board will vote no on the motion to close Waveland Elementary School in order to allow a year or two to see if the suggested decline in corporation enrollment actually occurs. If the decline does continue, perhaps Waveland is not the one that should be closed. My fervent desire is to avoid any closings. I have addressed this issue in prior meetings and will try to avoid repeating what I have said before. I'm reading this so that I can express what I need to say without omitting details. Most national studies have reinforced the concept that students are provided a better education in smaller schools. The summary of one such study is as follows, and this is from one particular study. Smaller schools are generally better for most purposes in education. Many studies conducted during the past 20 years have found that small schools, particularly at the primary school level, have a positive effect upon student achievement, extracurricular participation, student satisfaction, student behavior, and attendance. There is also evidence that closing schools is likely to lead to lower student achievement. Now back to our current issue. Those students needing assistance are more likely to be identified and helped in smaller schools. I hope that you will keep in mind our motto of doing what is best for kids. Nationally, lip service is paid to the concept of no child left behind. Closing Waveland, the building with the least potential for savings, unfortunately would at the same time cause a detrimental effect on some of our most vulnerable students. Closing Waveland will concentrate our elementary schools in the eastern half of our boundaries. It would also create a great void of public schools in the area. The distance between Turkey Run Elementary and Newmarket Elementary is about 15 miles. The distance between Southeast Fountain Elementary and Pleasant Hill Elementary to the north and the elementary school in Bainbridge on the south is over 20 miles. Closing Waveland Elementary would create a void of over 300 square miles with no building providing public education. Of course, public education for students in this area would still be available and provided by bus service. The question is this best for kids? Public education would not be denied, although students would be underserved. However, because of transportation issues, many of the corporation's most vulnerable students and their parents would have difficulty fully participating in school events, extracurricular activities, and sports. while presently many simply walk to school. We should not be in the business of making full access to education more difficult for, again, some of our most vulnerable children. Once again, public education would not be denied by closing, but students would be underserved. Educationally, larger schools are not the solution. We must keep our schools open. I strongly believe our society should be judged by how we treat our most vulnerable. One additional request. I'm requesting a roll call vote on the issue closing a building, since Robert's Rules of Order permits any member to make such a request.
Mr. Spencer, that's not a problem. I believe since we all vote here in public society, people will raise their hands. I will ask the person to voice their vote.
Thank
Yes
you.
or no. That is not a problem.
Thank you.
Additional comments? Seeing or hearing none, I will call for a roll call vote. Ms. Kincaid, would you call roll after your name is called? Please vote yea or nay.
Mr. Blaze. Mr. Bumgarner.
Yay.
Ms. Hess. Mr. Hudson. Nay. Mr. Kincaid. Yay. Mr. Motts.
Yea.
Mr. Spencer.
Nay.
Okay, with the vote, as everybody heard, a 5-2 vote for the motion. So we will proceed as the motion states with the closure of Waveland Elementary at the end of the 2013 school year. As a closing comment on that, I think that this was not taken lightly. Until the vote tonight, I really had no idea how this would go. It is a tough situation, and I know that it is an emotional one as well. And with that, we move to item 11 for public comment on school and policy matters. And again, if you would like to make comment, there are microphones at the front of the cafeteria. We ask that you come forward, state your name,